The moment HR asked me to return all company property, I realized they had no idea what I actually owned. I wasn't a founder. I wasn't an executive. I was just the person who quietly handled the paperwork no one else ever bothered to read. For over a decade, I kept that company running in ways nobody noticed, until the day they decided I was replaceable. They thought they were firing an employee. What they actually did was forget who held the keys to the building, and that mistake cost them everything. Here's how it happened. Why does the lobby turn into a haunted aquarium every time the humidity hits 60%? I muttered, wedged behind the IT closet door with a flashlight clenched between my teeth and an unopened packet of electrolyte powder rattling around in my hoodie pocket like a threat. The motion sensor lights were strobing again. 3 blinks, a pause, then darkness, like the building itself was trying to communicate in Morse code. Help. And of course, nobody else noticed until it started inconveniencing someone important. That morning had started like every other morning for the last 12 years. Me, Alina Me Caldwell, unlocking sweet 14 billion at 6:52 a.m. 8 minutes before the first overachiever would show up pretending they love mornings. I loved mornings the way you love a dentist appointment that ends early. You don't enjoy it. You just appreciate it's predictable. The key was the same key they handed me back when the company still fit inside a carking room and one founder's ego. Brass, worn smooth in the places my thumb hit it. I oiled it twice a year. You'd be shocked how many executives can't operate a lock if it squeaks. They assume it's broken the same way they assume accountability is optional. I stepped inside, and the smell hit me immediately. Lemon cleaner, stale carpet, and the faint ghost of last week's catered tie. The cleaning crew had left a mop bucket in the supply closet again, still half full, like they were planning to come back and finish the job in another lifetime. Someone from growth had used the sink like it was a confessional. Coffee grounds everywhere, a sticky ring of kombucha in the basin, and a spoon that looked like it had been through war. On the break room counter, a half-eaten protein bar lay naked next to a stack of investor pitch decks someone printed by accident. I peeled the wrapper off the paper jam with the calm of a woman disarming a bomb. Not my job, technically. Not in any contract. But guess who gets blamed when the CEO's first meeting is delayed because his precious printer decided to break? This gal. Some days I felt like the human version of duct tape, used exactly the same way. Quiet, necessary, ugly when you try to pull it off. By 7:05, my inbox had already reached double digits. Subject lines like, urgent, AC too cold help, the coffee machine is screaming, can you just move my desk? Like today, why is the internet slow? Sent from an office where 5 people were streaming a 4,000 webinar at once. The funniest part was the way everyone assumed I existed in a permanent state of availability. Like I slept in the ceiling tiles with the spare Ethernet cables. Like I materialized when someone said facilities into a conference room mirror. My title was Infrastructure and Operations Lead. My business card said it in bold letters. Still, half the company referred to me as front desk, because apparently if you are a woman who can solve problems, you must also be someone who answers phones and smiles a lot. I did smile sometimes, just not for them. I made it to my office, technically a converted storage room behind the kitchen, when I heard it again. The hiss. That long, irritated, wet hiss coming from the executive lounge, like a snake had learned corporate culture and was deeply disappointed. I closed my eyes. Please don't let it be the espresso machine. It was the espresso machine. The CEO's espresso machine wasn't just a machine. It was a personality, a shrine, a status symbol with a water line and an ego. When the board came in, they didn't ask how we were performing. They asked if we had upgraded the coffee situation. I walked into the lounge and saw it. The glossy stainless monster on the marble counter, LED display flickering like it was considering self-destruction. A puddle had formed under the drip tray. The hiss grew louder, then stopped, then started again, like a creature taking shallow breaths. "Don't do this," I whispered, like it could hear me, like it cared. Under the counter, the power strip was packed so tight with plugs it looked like a black plastic centipede. Espresso machine, mini fridge, under cabinet, a speaker someone installed to play calm beats for investor tour. And because irony loves me, one single cable labeled security cam. Great. So the coffee machine wasn't just a coffee machine. It was attached to the security feed. I yanked the espresso machine's plug out, and the lounge went quiet. Then, from somewhere in the ceiling, a faint click. The hallway camera outside the exec office blinked off. Beautiful. Somewhere, a security guard was about to call it and say, "Our cameras are down," and it was about to shrug like a possum playing dead. Then they'd call me, because everyone eventually called me. I pulled the flashlight out of my mouth and crawled under the counter like a woman returning to the battlefield she never asked for. A thin line of water had snuck under the base of the machine, probably from a cracked tube or a cheap fitting. Someone had poured filtered water into a reservoir that was designed to be hooked up directly, and now it was leaking like a gossip in a group chat. I tightened a clamp, replaced a worn washer, and wiped the underside with a paper towel that instantly disintegrated, because of course it did. I was halfway through reseating the plug layout when my phone buzzed. Paige Linton, HR. I stared at it like it was a suspicious package. Paige was new, 2 months in, and had that fresh graduate glow. High ponytail, immaculate teeth, and a belief that the world could be fixed with a culture initiative and a Slack emoji. She'd introduced herself by telling me she was passionate about people. People who weren't me, apparently. I answered with my hands still wet. "Eleanor." Her voice came through bright and falsely warm. "Hi, good morning. Quick question, do you have a minute later today for a sync?" A sync. Corporate speak for we're about to ruin your day, but we want you to feel like it was a collaborative decision. "What's it about?" I asked, because I wasn't born yesterday, even if they treated me like I was. A beat. Just some org updates, nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. The phrase people use right before they hand you a folder and try to steal your dignity. I looked at the espresso machine. It hissed again like it was laughing at me. "I'm busy," I said. "I totally understand," Paige chirped. "It'll be super quick. I'll send a calendar invite." Click. She didn't wait for me to agree. Of course she didn't. HR never waits for consent. They schedule your life like it's a conference room. 2 minutes later, the invite landed. Subject, quick sync time, 4:45 p.m. location. Conf room C attendees. Paige Linton, Trevor Hale, legal, Eleanor Caldwell, legal. I stared at the screen. My stomach did that thing it does right before a car accident. Drops, tightens, gets very quiet. I knew that lineup. HR, legal, small room, fake empathy, real consequences. I set my phone down, finished rewiring the power strip, and plugged the espresso machine back in. The camera light blinked on, the machine whirred, and for a moment everything looked normal again, which is what they always wanted. Normal, smooth, quiet, problems handled out of sight, so they could keep playing CEO on easy mode. By 9:10 a.m., the office was awake. The first wave of employees arrived carrying overpriced iced coffees like they were oxygen tanks. Somebody in marketing sprinted past me wearing a blazer over gym shorts. The CTO walked in without saying hello, staring straight through me like I was a decorative plant. I watched them move through the space I maintained. The lights that worked because I had replaced the ballast. The carpet that didn't smell because I'd fought a mildew outbreak personally. The conference rooms that didn't overheat because I had convinced a vendor to give us a discount unit during a supply chain panic. All of it held together by my hands and my memory. And still, when people spoke about the company, they spoke like the building ran itself. At 10:22, I got called to the 14th floor because the smart thermostat in the executive suite refused to sync with someone's phone. I walked in and saw the CEO's assistant standing there with her arms crossed like I was late for my own execution. "It says unauthorized user," she said. "It's a thermostat," I replied. "Not a dating app." She didn't laugh. Nobody in executive land laughed unless they were sure it was safe to. I fixed it in 3 minutes. Then I noticed the CEO was on a call, pacing, talking about streamlining and lean efficiency in the tone of a man who had never lifted anything heavier than a MacBook. He glanced at me briefly, eyes sliding over my presence like I was background noise. "Thanks," he said without looking. Not my name, not my title, just thanks like I was a vending machine that had dispensed competence. I walked out and felt something settle inside me. Not sadness, not anger exactly, a kind of cold understanding. They didn't know what I did here, not really. They knew I made problems disappear. That's not the same as knowing what holds the place together. At lunch, I ate at my desk, protein snack, cold apple, the sad little meal of someone who has trained themselves not to need breaks. I scrolled through emails while I chewed because that's what reliable people do. They become machines and then get punished for it when the company wants to cut costs. At 2:07, I got a message in Slack from Paige. Paige Linton. "Hey, looking forward to our chat later." The smiley face felt like a slap. At 3:30, legal emailed me a vague reminder about company property obligations. No details, no context, just a polished sentence with sharp edges. At 4:35, I stood in the bathroom staring at myself in the mirror. I wasn't old, not even close, but the office had aged me in invisible ways, little lines around my eyes from squinting at invoices, tension in my shoulders from carrying other people's emergencies. I adjusted my ponytail, smoothed the front of my hoodie, and stared at my reflection like I was about to go into court. The thing about being the person who keeps everything running is this: you don't get to be emotional. People only tolerate you if you're useful. If you ever become inconvenient, they talk about you like you're a broken chair. At 4:44, I walked to conference room. C. Paige was already there. She was wearing a beige blazer and the kind of smile that exists in corporate training videos. Next to her sat a man I'd never seen before, slick haircut, slicker shoes, holding a folder like it was an extension of his arm. He stood halfway, offered a hand. "Trevor Hale, legal." I didn't shake it. I just sat down. Paige gestured to the chair like we were about to do a friendly check-in. "Aliner, thank you for making time. We just wanted to connect on some organizational changes." There it was, the phrase that always comes before someone's life gets rearranged. I leaned back slightly. "Okay," Paige inhaled like she was reading off a script taped inside her skull. "So, as you know, we've been evaluating our operational needs as part of our strategic." "Skip the poetry," I said softly. Trevor's eyes flicked up. Paige blinked but kept smiling. "We're restructuring," she said, finally landing on the word like it was a pillow meant to soften the fall. Restructuring, the corporate guillotine with a friendly label. "And where do I fit in that?" I asked. Silence, the kind that tells you the answer before they speak it. Paige slid the folder across the table like she was offering me dessert. "We're moving in a different direction, and unfortunately your role is being eliminated." My role, not me, not my work, not my contributions, my role. A cardboard cutout they could throw away without guilt. I opened the folder. A severance packet, 3 months' pay, NDA, health coverage until the end of the month. A paragraph about appreciation that looked like it had been copy-pasted from a template. I flipped the page. They got my name wrong. Elinor Caldwell. Extra E, like I was a typo. Like I hadn't spent 12 years making sure their lights stayed on. Trevor spoke in a flat tone. "We'll need your badge and keys today, and any company property in your possession, physical or digital." I stared at him. Then I stared at Paige. Paige's smile faltered just a fraction, like she expected tears and didn't know what to do with calm. I took a slow breath, not because I was trying to be composed, because if I didn't breathe, I might say something that would get me arrested. I reached into my bag and placed my badge on the table. Then my key rang. 9 keys, each labeled in my handwriting. They clinked softly, a sound that carried more history than the two of them could understand. Paige exhaled like she was relieved. "Thank you, Aliner. We really appreciate." "Do you?" I asked. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, searching for a safe phrase. "It's not personal," she said, defaulting to the classic lie. I tilted my head. "Then you won't mind if I take it that way." Trevor cleared his throat. We also recommend you don't access company systems going forward." "I wouldn't dream of it," I said. Paige's eyes warmed with false sympathy. "You're going to be okay. You're young, you have so much." "Stop," I said quietly. She froze. "You think being young means I'm replaceable," I continued, my voice calm, almost gentle. "You think competence is a personality trait you can hire off LinkedIn." Trevor shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. Paige's smile died fully now. I stood, scooped my bag onto my shoulder, and looked at the folder one last time. "You asked for everything back," I said, nodding at the keys. "Just make sure you know what you're asking for." Then I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry in the hallway. I didn't give them the satisfaction of my mess. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. The kind of long that stretches because your brain is rewriting your life in real time. Outside, the air was sharp and bright, like the city hadn't gotten the memo that my world had shifted. People walked past me holding iced coffees and pretending their jobs were permanent. I didn't drive home. I pulled into a small parking lot, one of those strip mall ones where the asphalt is cracked and the lines are faded, and sat with the engine off, hands on the steering wheel, staring ahead like I might see the next move floating in the air. That's when my phone buzzed again. A text from Julian Price. Julian was an old contact, commercial leasing guy I'd dealt with back when the company was still pretending to be a scrappy startup instead of a grown-up machine that ate people. He was the kind of man who spoke in short sentences and never wasted a favor. His message was simple: "Julian, heard something, call me when you can." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back me, calling now. Because if there was one thing I'd learned from 12 years of holding a place together, it was this. When people finally decide they don't need you, that's usually the exact moment they realize they don't know what you were doing. And I remembered everything. I didn't call Julian right away. I sat there first, hands still on the steering wheel, watching a minivan struggle to back out of a parking spot like it was solving a moral dilemma. The radio played a commercial for a law firm that promised justice in bold fonts and smiling stock photos. Life, apparently, went on. I exhaled through my nose and finally hit dial. Julian picked up on the second ring. "Eleanor, no small talk," I said. "I got fired." A pause, not the shocked kind, the confirming kind. "Yeah," he said, "that tracks." I closed my eyes. "You said you heard something." "I did," Julian replied. "And before you ask, no, they don't know I know, but I remembered something they clearly didn't." That got my attention. "I'm listening." "You still on the master occupancy file?" he asked. My jaw tightened just a little. I was. As of last quarter. "And did they ever transfer tenant authority off your name?" The silence this time came from me. Julian let it sit. He knew how. "They didn't," I said slowly. "No," he confirmed. "They didn't." I felt something shift, not explode, not spike. Settle, like a weight clicking into place. "Say it out loud," Julian continued. "Who's listed as tenant of record?" I swallowed. "I am. And who missed the renewal notice window?" I laughed once, short, sharp, disbelieving. "They did." "By how long?" he asked. I checked the calendar in my head automatically. That muscle never went away. 2 days, Julian exhaled. 2 days is enough. I stared through the windshield at nothing in particular. "Enough for what?" "Enough for leverage," he said. "Enough for consequences." I didn't smile. Not yet. "Come by my office tomorrow," Julian added. "Bring everything. Every document, email, invoice, rider, addendum. We'll go through it clean." "Julian," I said carefully, "I don't want revenge." He snorted. "Good. Revenge is sloppy." "Then what is this?" "This," he said, "is math." That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was panicking. Panic requires uncertainty. This was clarity, and clarity doesn't let you rest, it makes you organize. By 11:42 p.m., my living room floor was covered in folders. Physical ones. Old school. Manila, color-coded, some with coffee stains and handwriting that belonged to a younger version of me who still thought being indispensable would protect her. I hadn't planned to keep them forever. I just never got around to throwing them out. Funny how that works. I opened my laptop and pulled up my personal email. Searched my name. There it was. Tenant authorization. Alina Caldwell insurance binder. Named insured utility account holder. Primary contact emergency access credential. Issued to Alina M. Caldwell thread after thread after thread. Things I'd set up when the company was fragile and broke and grateful. Things they never bothered to change because, why would they? I handled it. Alina handled it. Alina always handled it. My phone buzzed. A Slack notification I shouldn't have still been receiving. Facilities requests. Anyone know why the badge reader on the north entrance is glitching? I stared at the screen. Then I closed Slack. Not out of spite. Out of discipline. They asked for everything back. That included my availability. The next morning, Julian's office smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. The kind of place where contracts went to die or become weapons. He spread the documents across the conference table with the reverence of a man laying out evidence. They never filed a renewal, he said, tapping a clause with his pen. No written notice, no extension, no amendment. They assumed, I replied. Julian nodded. Assumptions are expensive. He flipped another page. Utilities are still in your name. I know. Insurance too. I know. And this one's my favorite, he said, holding up a thin document. They subleased the back suite last year. My head snapped up. They what? Third-party consulting group, crypto-adjacent, month-to-month, no disclosure, no consent from the tenant of record. I felt a slow, cold smile start somewhere behind my ribs. That's a breach, Julian said softly. A clean one. I leaned back in my chair. So what happens? Julian folded his hands. That depends. You can notify them, give them a chance to cure, extend the lease retroactively. And if I don't? Then you terminate. 30 days, no drama, all legal. I pictured Paige's smile. Trevor's folder, the way they slid my life across a table like a napkin. No warnings, I said. Julian met my eyes. I didn't think you'd want any. I signed the termination notice that afternoon. No theatrics, no shaking hands. Just my name, steady and correct, in the space where it belonged. Julian handled the rest. Certified mail, digital copies, proper service, everything documented, everything boring. That was the best part. Chaos only happens when someone cuts corners. I wasn't about to. By the time I got home, my phone was already lighting up. Unknown number, then another, then another. Emails followed. Subject. Question regarding lease documentation subject. Urgent clarification needed subject. Please call ASAP. I didn't answer. Instead, I poured a glass of water, fed my cat, and opened a new document on my laptop. I titled it Timeline, not for them, for me, because when this went sideways, and it would, I wanted the truth clean and chronological. I wanted receipts, and I had them. The first crack showed on day 3. The office coffee machine went down again. This time, it unplugged it themselves, which took out the security camera, which triggered a system alert, which escalated to a vendor call, which required authorization, which went to my old email. No one noticed at first. They just assumed someone else was handling it. By noon, the executive floor was buzzing, doors opening, voices raised. That brittle energy that only shows up when people realize something foundational is off. At 1:14 p.m., Paige emailed me directly. Paige Linton, hi Alina, hope you're well. We're seeing some irregularities in vendor access and need clarification on a few operational items. Can you please confirm? I didn't read the rest. I forwarded it to Julian. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and one word. Proceed. The notice was posted on a Thursday. Bright paper. Official seal. Zip-tied to the glass like a warning label. I wasn't there to see it, but I didn't need to be. Julian sent me a photo. I stared at my name printed at the top. Not misspelled. Correct. Recognized. I felt something unexpected then, not triumph, not vindication. Relief. Because for the first time in years, the system acknowledged that I existed. The company went into meltdown mode. They called the property manager, then legal, then external counsel, then each other. Emails flew. Meetings were scheduled and rescheduled. Slack channels filled with speculation. Someone finally asked the right question. Who is Alina Caldwell? No one had a good answer. By the time they figured it out, it was too late. The clock doesn't care when you realize your mistake. It keeps moving. Julian called me that evening. They're panicking, he said, which is understandable. Are they trying to fight it? I asked. They asked if it was a misunderstanding. I laughed. Of course they did. They also asked, Julian continued, if you'd be open to a conversation. I leaned against my kitchen counter. About what? Retention, he said. Reinstatement, maybe a consulting offer. I considered it. Not seriously, just enough to be thorough. Tell them no, I said. And tell them why. Julian smiled. I could hear it. Already did. That night I slept. Deep, dreamless. The kind of sleep you get when you're no longer bracing for impact. In the morning, I woke up to headlines. Nothing major, just whispers. Local firm faces unexpected lease dispute, sources cite internal oversight. I made coffee. Real coffee. The kind that doesn't hiss at you. I sat at my table and scrolled through my phone while sunlight hit the floor in clean lines. A message came in from an old coworker. Dan, hey, things are weird here. People are freaking out. Just wanted to say, I see you. I stared at it for a moment. Then I typed back, me. I know. By the end of the week, the company had 30 days. 30 days to pack up years of assumptions. 30 days to learn what happens when you fire the person who knows where everything is buried and who owns the map. I didn't celebrate. I organized. Because this wasn't the end. Not yet. This was just the moment they realized the lights were still on. But no one was left who knew where the switch was. The 30-day countdown changed the building's personality. You could feel it the moment you walked past. What used to hum now buzzed. What used to glide now lurched. Doors slammed harder. Voices carried farther. The place had gone from confident to defensive in less than a week, like a boxer who realized too late that his opponent wasn't bluffing. I didn't go back. I didn't need to. The updates came to me anyway. Day 4. The board demanded an emergency call. Day 6. Legal discovered the sublease violation and tried to quietly unwind it. Day 9. The temp receptionist quit after someone yelled at her for misfilling the eviction notice. The one she'd been told was probably nothing. Nothing has consequences when you ignore it long enough. Julian kept me looped in, precise and dry. They're trying to negotiate directly with the property owner, he said during one call. They can't, I replied. No, he agreed. They really can't. On day 12, they tried to reach me again. This time it was the CEO, Martin Voss. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Aliner, he said, skipping the greeting like urgency could erase history. We need to talk. We're talking, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. Calm, neutral, untouchable. You blindsided us, he snapped. No, I corrected. You fired me. Everything after that is just physics. A pause, breathing. Restraint cracking. This doesn't have to be hostile, he tried. We can fix this. You could have fixed it, I said. You chose not to. We're willing to make you whole, Martin said. Title, compensation. Equity, I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. You already showed me what I'm worth to you, I replied. You just forgot I kept the receipts. Silence stretched. Finally, quieter. What do you want? The question landed wrong, like an insult pretending to be humility. I want what you already asked for, I said. Everything returned. He hung up without another word. The notice to vacate was posted on a Monday morning, fluorescent, impossible to miss. Security tried to peel it off. It didn't budge. Someone took a photo, someone else posted it. Someone else added commentary. By noon, the story had legs, not a scandal. Worse, an embarrassment. By Wednesday, reporters were calling it an operational oversight. By Friday, it had evolved into a cautionary tale. They never mentioned my age, or my gender, or the years I spent keeping their lights on. They didn't have to. Everyone reading between the lines knew exactly what happened. The company unraveled publicly and quietly at the same time. In public, there were statements, carefully worded, polished, meaningless. Privately, there were tears in conference rooms and frantic calls to commercial realtors who suddenly weren't returning messages. On the final day, a moving truck parked out front before sunrise. I watched from across the street, coffee in hand, sunglasses on, anonymous. Chairs, monitors, whiteboards filled with half-erased buzzwords. Plants someone had named and promptly forgotten to water. At one point, Martin stormed out, phone pressed to his ear, face red, suit wrinkled. He kicked the tire of the truck hard enough to hurt himself and tried not to show it. Someone filmed that too. The internet did the rest. Bloom Pulse moved in the following Monday. Clean vans, soft music, people who smiled at the security guard and read the lease before signing it. They hung a banner that said your energy starts here. Not my style, but they paid on time. That evening, a courier knocked on my door. Basket, thank you note, handwritten. I set it on the counter and laughed, not sharp, not bitter. Real. Later, I opened my hallway closet and took out the last thing I'd kept, the original key. Brass. Worn smooth, honest. I hung it on a hook beside my desk, not because it unlocked anything anymore, but because once it unlocked everything. And because now it didn't have to. People ask sometimes if I regret it, if I feel guilty. I tell them the truth. I regret staying silent for so long. I regret believing loyalty would be recognized without proof. I regret thinking competence didn't need a paper trail. But what I did, that was just returning company property. With interest. If you've ever been fired, ignored, or underestimated at work, subscribe for more stories about corporate mistakes, silent power, and legal consequences.